She's sitting up front, we get to see it all.
You can see it first.
First.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a couple of
When
micro
he
seconds
was
between
driving
us.
around with Dad, we were taking photos. He put his hand up on the windshield. He said, "Look at this."
That's so old. You tell old jokes. Old people. Oh, that's right, old people.
I grew up with old people.
So did I.
Old people out
Yeah. Yes, dear.
there. I didn't care 50, 60.
That was.
All right, good evening. We can start our class. We're continuing to work through the book of John, and we are coming up on chapter 13. And I titled this, as well as some of the other types of commentary we had, as washing the feet of the disciples, and also Jesus is the servant. We're going to be able to see that theme throughout. The action is, of course, washing the feet. The theme is going to be Jesus is a servant. And it is the final discourse that Jesus gives to his apostles or disciples at the time, the 12, or represented here at this, what a lot of times we call the Last Supper, the upper room, different things that we call it. But it is an opportunity for Jesus to be able to sit down and do what he does, is teach, and to be able to instruct his disciples, because his time is coming near. And we can see that we've seen through the entire book when Jesus' time is not now, but it is now. It's coming up to his final hours. My understanding is that it's within hours of basically when Judas goes and does his thing, and we'll read about that before he actually starts getting the interaction of the Jews and the leaders, so they can take him up to his crucifixion time frame. So it is in the last days. What time of the year is this that they're working towards in chapter 13?
Passover should be fine.
The what?
Passover.
The Passover.
Springtime.
Springtime, Passover, and of course, as we noted in chapter 12, very fitting, each one of these events that Jesus has timed for a specific reason, to be able to be very specific in his symbolism. And we're going to see symbolism as well throughout this area when we're talking about it. Very subtle, but it's very, very good information for us to understand exactly what he's saying. So if we just read it over, all we would think is that, okay, we have Jesus going and washing their feet, gesture of being a good servant, but it goes deeper than that. We're going to be able to dig down a little bit and see the different scenes as we have. We have about 6 or 7 different scenes. When we first start out, we're going to see the hour has come, Jesus' hour has come, and then it's going to quickly switch into him doing an action, a feet washing action, and it's very symbolic, and we're going to get a little bit deeper into that. The disciples don't understand it. He explains it, and then he'll again explain it to them, and we can make great application from that as well. Then we're going to go into the Peter's resistance. Peter does, in normal attitude of Peter, he's always resisting or thinking different things, being able to, look ahead. He's very reactive, and we can see that as well in his actions. And then the resistance is really good, because we're going to be able to see a little bit more into what Jesus is really thinking, because he has to explain it a little deeper. And then he's going to come into an example, and then he's going to give a command. And then we're going to see where Judas' betrayal, his interaction between him and Judas, as well as providing that information to his disciples. Disciples probably don't understand it, and they don't at the time. And we're going to see that as well. We're going to be able to see how Jesus really knows the heart of men in this area as well. And then we're going to see he finishes up with a new commandment, which is very interesting, because we're going to get into, is this really a new commandment? Is it or isn't it? And we're going to talk a little bit about that, and we're also going to be able to see how it applies. And what's interesting, at least in my view, is that he chooses that commandment to be almost his last thing that he really talks to them, at least in this episode. He'll go on a little bit more in chapter 14, continuing to teach his disciples. But that was a very, very interesting viewpoint, and as well as, again, we're going to see the famous Peter's denial. One of the things that also I noticed is that the other Gospels, they'll go through a lot of this information, but it isn't in the same vantage point as John gives and provides. So this is very unique in this area. We're going to see, a lot of different in this. The other three Gospels, they do touch on a few of these things, but he goes about it in a whole different way that kind of sheds light, and I think a good application for us. Before we get started, let's go to God in prayer. God, our Father in heaven, we are so thankful that you love us, you take care of us, you have your inspired word for us to learn from. We pray, God, that we don't just skim over it, but we really, truly understand what you wanted of us, as well as you sent your Son Jesus to be able to accomplish, and then what we can apply from it. We are very thankful we have a group of Christians that will study, that will look, that will question, that will seek your understanding to love you more. We pray, God, after this study that we will be closer to you, we will love you more, we will be humbled, we will be able to better walk as you would like us to. We are so thankful for your Son Jesus and what he provided to us, and it's in his name that we pray. Amen. All right. Some of the overview of this area, we're going to see the model of humble service that Jesus provides us, and the commandment to love. Nothing new, but it's in a different way, and he really shows this example of it. He's going to also show us, why servanthood is essential to leadership, and we'll get to that as a question that we can kind of answer together. Why it's important to be an essential leader. Because his disciples were absolute leaders, weren't they? They were the ones going out as apostles. They were the ones teaching. This was a very important lesson that Jesus was teaching to his future leaders, and even leaders at that time, but even the future leaders as he's gone. And we're also going to be able to see what it means to love as he loved you. There's a few cross references that we can talk a little bit about later. But let's get into it. First of all, we know that his hour has come, being Jesus, and we're going to be able to see that. The setting, as we talked about, was the upper room, Passover week, very intimate moment. This wasn't a moment where he had the Jews around, the Pharisees, where they were going to be arguing back and forth with him. A very intimate setting where he would be basically his closest companions that he's had are going to be up there in that room with him. So it is a moment that was extreme. And we're going to be able to kind of examine that and kind of put ourselves in that situation with him. And it's also be able to, one of the purposes of this whole area was to demonstrate his full extent of his love for his people, his disciples, as well as all of us. Let's take a look at the first section. We'll read from chapter 13, 1 through 3. Can I get a reader?
Yeah, I'll read. Now, before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come, that he should depart from this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. And supper being ended, the devil having already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come from God and was going to God.
Okay, so here we see that Jesus' hour has come. We've all been waiting for it. We've been seeing it throughout the area, and now he actually announces it, that now before the feast, the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew, so he already knew. A lot of times a lot of folks will think that, things just happen. No, Jesus knew when his hour was and what he was going to do, and he had come to depart out of this world to his Father. So it was a closing moment for him that he had in this point. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. What does that statement tell us? having loved his
He
own.
died for him.
Say again?
He died for him.
He is going to die for them. Exactly. Absolutely. He is going to die for them. Having loved his own. So what was he talking about there when he was talking about loving his own? Who are in the world?
Specifically, it'd be the apostles, I think, but
Right.
anyone who believed in him.
Right. So exactly what Ken said there was, it was at that point addressing his disciples or his apostles that were right there. However, we also know that it's going to spill over to the end, where he loved them till the end. And then during the supper, when the devil had already put into the heart of Judas, Simon's son, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands and that he had come from the Father and was going back. Why do you think he threw that in there at that point? Very interesting. You know, right at the beginning of this, when he's talking about his hours come, and then he throws this in there. John throws this in there to kind of set everything off. What's your thoughts on that? Go ahead.
Are you talking about the part that he threw in as being the Judas Iscariot?
Yes, yes, the supper. During the supper, when Jesus had, or when the devil had already put into the heart of Judas, why would John throw that in there?
Just that, the plan was in action already. I mean, the fact that the devil was able to get to a disciple during the Last Supper.
He's setting it up. He is absolutely, he's setting it up. Go ahead, Mike.
I'm just basically saying the same stuff that Dave was saying, just that this is setting the scene, like you're saying, the same scene we see in the other Gospels of the Last Supper, where he gives the morsels of bread that he's dipped it to with the guy that's going to betray him.
Right.
But then contrasting it with this statement that he threw in there, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands and that he had come from God and was going back to God. It's like, well, here's my betrayer, but God's in control.
Right. And it also kind of shows this. The key point is Jesus knows what's coming. He knows his betrayal. He knows the suffering. He knows the death. And yet, his response in this whole area, even to that guy who is going to betray him, is what?
Love. You know that he's going to love him anyway.
Bingo, love. We're going to be able to see love hit here. Something that we all struggle with, I guarantee you. I know I would. But Jesus is of course giving a whole new commandment here, and he's setting up the stage so we know right from the beginning, even when he starts doing this act, we got a traitor in the midst. He could have just immediately said, you know what, Jews, get on out of here. We don't need you in here. Ken?
It's been commented to me that in all the Gospels, when they mention Judas, they never really run him down. They just mention that he betrayed him. They don't really go into a lot of opinion about him. They just say what he did. They don't really have an opinion or really run him down or debase him. They just say he's the one who betrayed him. That's all they say about him.
Isn't there that one part where Jesus said it would be better for him that he had never been born?
We also see who put that sin in his heart. Who was that? By the choice of Judas. He had a flaw that Satan was able to use that against him. And we also see for the money, and in this situation it was for the money that he did that. He uses our own desires to be able to put sin into our own hearts, and that was in James 1:14. So let's take a look at the next scene as it comes up. 4 through 5, the washing of the feet. Somebody read 4 through 5 for me.
He rose from supper, laid aside his outer garments, and taking a towel, tied it around his waist. And he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around him.
Okay, so the scene here comes in. Of course, for us it would be absolutely crazy and wacky because we don't, as far as I know, we don't go and wash people's feet when they come in. But their culture was more in the sense where they would do that out in the dust and all when they come in. They would wash the feet and then they would come into the house, right? Now, when you think about this, though, this is absolutely symbolic because, I mean, they were right ready in the middle of the feast or coming into the area, so it is very symbolic. If it was if it was more or less for purpose, they would have did it right from the beginning. Somebody would either, they would wash their own feet, or they'd have a servant come in and wash their feet, right? So this was absolutely symbolic when Jesus takes the center stage. And what does he do? What's the first thing he does?
Girds himself with that towel.
He lays aside his outer garments,
Oh,
right?
okay.
Very symbolic. Everything that John writes about is symbolic. And we're going to see this tied into verse 12 later. But he first lays aside his outer garments. What does that mean to us right away, if we were thinking about it? What's he doing? He's bringing himself down to the servant's level, right? That's what the servants do. They'll remove the outer garment. They'll wrap themselves with the towel. Then he pours the water in a basin. Then he begins to wash the disciples' feet and wipes them with the towel as he goes through. So this whole concept here is that the foot washing was, of course, for the servants to do. And even what I've read was not just the servants, but the lowest of the servants would get that job, right? They would be the ones who actually do that. It wasn't ever peer-to-peer, and it definitely wasn't master to down. So he humbles himself to the lowest level here to begin to do this, and then he completely reverses the role. And a very shocking action, of course, to all of them that were sitting in there, and we're going to see that a little bit further. But you know what we think we know is that what love serves, love gives to others, and love never says it's too much. And that's almost what he was doing by this whole concept, at least going through this first portion of this example. The outer garments, again, that was connected. We're going to see the connection to verse 12. And in Philippians 2 and 7, he gives everything of himself, basically, in this laying out of all that he has in the form of a servant. We also see in Mark 10 and 45, what was the Son of God, Son of Man's purpose to come? Was it to be the leader, or was he to serve? He was there to serve. That was his purpose. He was absolutely bringing it out as his last lesson to these disciples. He humbled himself, taking the form of a servant, and we also see that in Philippians 2 and 5. All right. So what kind of application do we have here? He doesn't just teach humility. I mean, he can sit there and say, this is what you do. This is how you do it. What does he do?
He illustrates.
He illustrates it. He absolutely gives the example. So a lot of times, too, we may be able to talk the talk, but can we walk the walk as well? Are we an example? Something we got to think about, right? We can talk about it all the time. But are we the example? He was the example. He showed them exactly what he was going to do. In fact, he took it to the level of what? Death on the cross for him. So he is absolutely the model. The greatest in the kingdom, and yet he's willing to serve. That's a good lesson for us. Let's take a look at 6 through 11, and this is where Peter comes back in the normal Peter fashion, right? Wait a second here. Peter, I can imagine us all, though, in that situation. If we were bold enough to interrupt and ask a question to Jesus, we would probably say the same thing. At least I would, right? Because it's a difficult situation. Lord, do you wash my feet? We're going to see that in 12 through 11. Can I get a reader from 12 through 11? I'm sorry, 6 through 11.
Then he came to Simon Peter, and Peter said to him, Lord, are you washing my feet? Jesus answered and said to him, what I am doing you do not understand now, but you will know after this. Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. And Jesus answered him, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, not my feet only, but also my hands and my head. And Jesus said to him, he who is bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not all of you. For he knew who had betrayed him. Therefore he said, you are not all clean.
So you can see that. Peter's discomfort with this whole situation with Jesus, the master teacher, the Savior coming, the Son of God coming down and washing my feet. Wait a second. I would be discomforted too. So, I mean, a lot of times we give Peter a bad rap, but wouldn't we do the same thing, thinking about it? Yeah. And even Jesus says to him, he says, he came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, do you wash my feet? Well, of course, that's a good question. And Jesus answered him, what I am doing, you do not understand now, but afterwards you will. I wonder when, after he just finishes washing his feet, or after what?
After
death.
After his resurrection.
Yeah, exactly, after his death. You will understand all of this. I'm going to be a little more clear later to tell you, as he says to him, we'll see that later, but you won't fully understand it. And later on, what will the disciples or the apostles be doing? The same thing, right? So we can see that as an application that, when we first start out, we don't understand. We just continue to strive to understand and understand. And hopefully, we'll be like Peter, where it says, later on, you will understand. So then he goes on and he says, Lord, not my feet, but also my hands and my head. And Jesus said to him, the one who has bathed doesn't need wash except his feet, but is completely clean. You are clean, but not every one of you are. Okay, let's start with the first part of this. So Peter was saying, well, if you didn't wash my feet, I really need all over the place. If that's the case, right? We'd be thinking the same thing. But what does Jesus tell him? What is he telling him there? You're already clean. So Peter is already clean. So what does that mean? Does that mean he's already clean, fresh and clean? Now, go ahead.
Well, Peter's thinking physical, and
Yes.
Jesus is teaching him spiritual.
Right.
So that shift is happening in the teaching.
Yeah.
I think Peter might have been thinking more than that, because he said, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me.
Right.
And so he's saying, well, I want to be a part of you,
Yes.
or have a part with you no matter what, so do all of me.
Right.
So I have more.
I want to be all in. I'm all in,
Right.
Jesus. But he still didn't quite understand that part of just the feet. So Jesus kind of said something different. He said, you actually don't need an entire bath for me. You only need your feet. What is he saying in that situation? What can we take of that? Some would think that it is kind of symbolic in regard to baptism, right? Doesn't mean you have to go and be dipped every single time. Why? Because we go through it once, because we obey, we are obedient, we commit, and then at that point, what do we have to do? We have to continue to go back to Jesus for what?
Forgiveness.
For forgiveness. Exactly. So is this similar, would you say?
Yeah.
Very similar.
He's already been baptized. He's already been forgiven of his sins. And it's just a foot washing right now for another reason.
Right. Now, it isn't a direct relationship, in my opinion, of baptism, because if that's the case, they would say, well, if that's the case, then, let's just take a bath and let's just wash our feet. It's not a apples to apples, but it is very symbolic in regard to what we do with Jesus and how we get his forgiveness and how we stay with him and what he told Peter. But there's somebody who needs a little more than just the feet washing. Did you get that at the last bit of it?
Maybe he's talking about the heart. His heart is clean.
Yeah, absolutely. His heart is clean. He's a believer. He understands, right? Peter does. And probably the other 11 did, but there was one who didn't. And who was that? Judas. Exactly. So, I wonder if the disciples at that time said, wait a second, not quite yet. They may not have picked up on it. Go ahead.
Judas is one of these ones who's washing their feet.
Yes, he is.
So what he's kind of referring to is, even though you've all been with me in this way,
Mhm.
even though I have come to you and served you, both in this symbolic gesture and throughout my entire ministry and my entire time with you, I've been here washing your feet, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
One of you is still not clean.
That's right.
One of you did
Right.
not benefit from
The
it.
symbolic point is also he is serving them, and he's going to continue to serve them, even though there's someone in the midst that's what? That's evil and betraying. He is still going to serve.
It's not his real fault.
And we'll get to that application for us
Yeah,
as
that's
well.
still that stand at the door and knock.
Yeah,
You gotta open that door.
right.
But Jesus even called him a devil. He's saying one of you is the devil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then in 1 John 1:9, the continual confession keeps us clean in our daily walk. Very similar to what he's talking about in that regard of the feet washing, where it's not a complete bath. He used that opportunity just to kind of to share and teach as well. That wasn't his main point, is to take a bath and then, get your feet washed. His was servantry, but he took that opportunity to be able to go a little deeper into the metaphor and what he was actually saying. Let's take a look at the example and the command in 12 and 17. And this one here is, do you understand what I just did? And this is what Jesus was talking. Can I get a reader from 12 through 17?
Okay. So when he had washed their feet, taken his garments, and sat down again, he said to them, do you know what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you say, well, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I have given you an example that you should do as I have done to you. Most assuredly, I say to you, the servant is not greater than his master, nor is he who is sent greater than he who sent him. If you know these things, blessed are you if you do them.
Right. Totally upside down in what we think in a lot of reasoning. So the first part of this section is interesting. I believe your version said that he went to his place or sat down in his place when he said that when he washed his feet and then he put his outer garments on and resumed his place. A lot of other commentaries say that that's connected very similar to chapter 4 or verse 4 when he went and he resumed the position of a servant, right? And then now he's going and he's taken his place from the servant back up to the master and also the teacher, because he goes back into teaching mode at that point. So that's what that area is. So a lot of times we have to be able to realize that, at least in my application, is this. We have leaders, we have teachers, they're also servants, and they have to be able to resume the position of teacher. And that's what he's doing here, as well as being, the King of Kings and also Christ. Go ahead.
It's interesting the cultural barriers that he's knocking down right now as well. Is that there's classism, there's all these barriers at this time in history of this person only does this, and he's breaking all that down, turning it upside down.
Right.
Even here, I'm still doing this also, and it doesn't demean me.
Right. And his audience is who? His apostles.
Yeah.
They're going to be going out and doing that exact same thing. They're going to have to do that. They're going to have to be able to take off their outer garments, symbolically, to be able to be the servant, and then turn around and put their garments on and do what?
Teach.
And teach and lead. So we got to be able to think that, and that was one of the things that I talked about in the first, is that what does a good leader have to be? They have to be a great servant.
Well, they call, there's a term that's been used recently, it's called servant leadership.
Yes.
And it's oftentimes referred to elders as the servant leaders.
Correct. Right. Just like the sheepdogs. I mean, the sheepdogs out there, what are they doing? They're watching the sheep. They're serving those sheep to make sure they don't get killed, taken away, anything happening to them. Same thing, the leaders as elders. Okay, so when it goes into, he says, do you understand what I have done? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, for so I am. If I then, your teacher and Lord, have washed your feet, you ought to also wash one another's feet. That's exactly what I was talking about earlier. He just did that. He just went and took himself down to a servant, and now he's back up to the leader and the teacher. Now that I've done that, do you understand what I just did? He's talking to all of his apostles out there. I hope you're getting it. Right? Because that's what you're going to be doing. And they do get it later. They do get it because they absolutely did that as they went through. Many of them gave their lives, as Jesus did. Very interesting. And we always got to think, I think back even on myself, am I doing that, right? Am I being a servant? Am I trying to serve as much as possible? Am I trying to teach as much as possible? Am I doing what Jesus is telling here? Try to, pray to, continue to try to grow. And those folks here, at this point, they weren't like that, were they? But they sure did, and that's what Jesus said. You may not understand now, but you will. So he says, for I have given you an example, which he absolutely did, that you should also do just as I have done. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master. A servant is not greater than his master, nor a messenger greater than the one who sent him. If you know these things, you are blessed if you do them. Okay, so right here at the end it says, you may know them, but what do they have to do? They have to do them, right? And again, we may know the scriptures inside and out. We may be able to teach inside and out. But are we doing the work? Are we being the servant? Are we being able to do those things? That's what he's saying. You may know it, but what does he say at the last little bit? If you do them, you are blessed. So Jesus explains that act as the example, of course, so it wasn't just a mere ritual that he's doing, or it wasn't just that their feet were dirty. So he's specifically going through that as an example. I wonder too if like what we would do is we would plan it out, think about it. Okay, this is what I'm going to do now, and then do it. Jesus, did he plan it for a long time? I don't know. Did he just know and just decide to do it? He saw the water, and there it is. Let's make a lesson out of this. I don't know. But it's interesting the way he thinks and the way he works through that as the master teacher. Kind of strange how my mind just wanders off like that. All right. So he says, the act is an example, not ritual. The principle is, what's the principle behind this whole thing? Humility.
You should humble
Go
yourself.
ahead.
Take the pride out of the way and be humble.
Yes, exactly. Don't be too proud to go and do that. I'm doing what the servant does. The lowest servant at that. You guys can do the same thing. Go ahead.
You just showed them that he's no better than they are.
Absolutely. He's the teacher, and he goes and does the same thing. And we also say if we know these things, we're blessed. But if we do them, we're even more blessed. Blessings come through obedience, not just knowledge. We can know all kinds of things. But we have to be able to obey what he's saying here. And this is a command, what he's telling them. This is the command, the new commandment, 31 through 35. So we're going to see some betrayal here coming up, or at least Jesus is talking about this in verse 18 through 30. It's a little bit longer read. Can I get a reader through that?
And I do not speak concerning all of you. I know whom I have chosen, but that the scripture may be fulfilled. He who eats bread with me has lifted up his heel against me. Now I tell you before it comes, that when it does come to pass, you may believe that I am he. Most assuredly I say to you, he who receives whomever I send receives me, and he who receives me receives him who sent me. When Jesus had said these things, he was troubled in spirit and testified and said, most assuredly I say to you, one of you will betray me. Then the disciples looked at one another, perplexed about whom he spoke.
So, in this situation here, why do you think he brings it up like that? He just shifts gears, bam, right in the middle of things. This is a whole different gear shift. He had two reasons that he said. He said, one, he says that, first of all, I'm not speaking to all of you, so he's talking about the whole group here. So there is some, and it kind of shows, even within our whole groups, there's always something that we don't know that, either is faithful or we're working on or we're struggling with. Jesus knows, first of all, that's the first thing I get out of it. But he says that, but the scripture will be fulfilled. So he's talking about a prophecy here, isn't he? Psalms 41 and 9. What did they say in 41 and 9? That there is going to be a betrayer. So he's even showing that he understands all things. And he also talks about, why is he telling it to them right then and there?
So that when it happens, they'll remember it.
Bingo. So when that happens, they'll remember it and they'll understand who he is. Now, it's not like they didn't understand who he is. They already knew he was the Christ. However, they can remember that, yes, he is all of what he's saying.
But Moses said you can know a prophet was sent from God if what he foretold came to pass. If it didn't, God didn't send it.
Right, right. You know, it's also interesting on how he identified Judas. So first of all, when he talked to this, you know, he said this to his disciples. His disciples were, you know, as Jesus was reclining at the air. So Simon Peter motioned to him and asked Jesus who is he speaking of, and that was in verse 24. So the disciples leaned back in the chairs against Jesus and said to him, "Lord, who is it?" And Jesus gave, what did he say? Let me see. In verse 26, Jesus answered, "It is he whom I will give the morsel of bread when I have dipped it." That's interesting how he did that as well. Now, you know, the funny thing is that they still didn't really catch on, because what does he do? He goes and he does that immediately in front of them. Do they say, look, there he is, get him out of here? They still didn't quite understand, did they? That's interesting. I don't know if they weren't paying close attention or if it was something that they didn't understand. Does anybody have an idea on that?
I don't think they knew exactly what was going to happen.
Yeah. I guess they didn't even realize what the betrayal is either, of course.
They didn't understand what the betrayal was actually going to be.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
I always think of it as, you know, because up until this point, Jesus had always spoken so many parables, so they probably assumed it was something like that, and then there's probably just a little doubt they didn't believe it was going to be.
Yeah, you know, I mean, these guys were sitting there still trying to figure out who it was. They were worried if it was them, right? And then he also says, the disciple whom Jesus loved, who do you think that was? John. That was John, right? So it's Peter and John really back and forth trying to figure out who this was. And then so then one leans over and asks Jesus this, and he says, okay, now maybe he said it quietly, I don't know. But he said, this is who I'm going to show. I'm going to reveal this. This is the big reveal, right? But they didn't seem to get it. So he takes it and he dips the morsel of bread in, and then he gives it to Judas.
I was thinking sometimes when we have our ideas about who people are, even when presented with very obvious contradictory evidence, it can be hard for us to believe it. So probably they just weren't mentally ready to accept that any of them would betray Jesus, and that's why this sign kind of went right over their heads.
Could be. You know, what's also interesting too is that, you know, why does he use a morsel of bread, you know, instead of just saying, it's him? You know?
Well,
I don't know.
there are the parallel verses where he says basically, one of you dips his hand in the bowl with me, basically.
Yeah. At the same time.
My brothers, my close friends,
Yeah.
one of you guys is going to do this, so it's very much
Right.
one who I share something
Right.
with.
You know, and that's almost a little bit, you know, more interesting, whereas Jesus could even predict that type of an information instead of making it happen. Right? In this case, John identifies it as he was giving him some bread. And that's almost like symbolic of, you know, if I give somebody a piece of bread or give them a morsel or whatever it is, it's almost still of a kindness instead of saying, give me that, you're going to betray me, take his food away from him. No, he's still handing stuff out at that point. You know, I don't know if that means anything or not. Go ahead.
I think that a lot of it probably comes back to overconfidence, because, again, that might have even been the position of Judas himself, because he seemed surprised when Jesus actually ended up getting killed over what he did. You know, and so they all might have been having this attitude like, well, who can touch Jesus? He's the Son of God.
And it's funny too how Jesus even tells him. He says, "Okay, now go." It says as soon after he had taken the morsel, Satan enters him. Jesus said to him, "What you were going to do quickly." And no one at the table knew what he was doing. They all thought that maybe he whispered to him and says, "Hey, go out and get some more food or whatever." They didn't know, but he took off and went. He almost gave him an additional chance. You know, it's almost like Judas, you don't really need to do this if you don't want to, but it was like, it's going to happen. You're going to do what you're going to do? Go. Do it quickly. And he went. So he identifies his betrayer, and we saw that in Psalms 41. Jesus understands all that's around him, all the people. He understands their hearts. He understands our hearts. We got to understand that and know that. And you know, the funny thing is that, you know, these were all called to Jesus to be able to be them, and yet we still had one who decided not to. Decided to selectively leave on his own, with the help of Satan, of course. All right, so we have a new commandment here. He says in verse 31 through 35, and I won't have this, we won't read this whole section here, but the new commandment that he gives you is to what? Love one another just as I have loved you. Is that a new commandment?
Not exactly. I don't know if you ever put it.
It's more of a sacrificial love in this situation. So it is a little different than just true love. Love your neighbor as yourself. This is more of a sacrifice of a love that he's given out to them. This isn't just loving, okay, I love my neighbor as myself. Sometimes I don't take care of myself, but in this situation it's even deeper than that. What he told these folks to do is deeper, and he gave the example of it being deeper by being able to love who? Judas. Exactly. And he also puts himself last. I mean, it means that in this situation, what he told them is you deny yourself. You put other people first, even if you don't like them, even if they're going to betray you. But you also put yourself last. And his other example was that he teaches too. So it's not just putting yourself last and just taking the brunt of everything. You have to be able to teach as well as you do that, as he did. So Peter's denial is predicted here in 38 and 36. And this is when he says, Simon Peter said to him, Lord, where are you going? This is when he was going with the situation of where he was going, and he's trying to figure out what he's going to do. And he says, he can't follow me where I am going. And Peter said to him, Lord, why can I not follow you? I will lay down my life for you. Jesus answered, you will lay down your life for me? Truly, truly, I say to you, the rooster will not crow until you have denied me 3 times. So what is that telling us here? There will be a time when Peter does do exactly what he says, but there is a time also when he's going to be able to deny Christ. Was Peter a good follower of Christ? Absolutely was. He learned. So could we fall into that situation? Yes, we can. Absolutely we can. That's the application I take of that, is that Christ's blood will cover a multitude of sins. And in this case, he denied Christ. And look what he did for him after that. Talk about growth. Talk about understanding the commandment that he did. Peter definitely understood the commandment, and so did the other 12, or the 11. They understood the commandment. They understood the assignment. And they went after it in all glory. Any other comments? Closing comments, questions? Go ahead.
I just always thought the table scene was interesting because he said Judas would dip his hand into the bowl. That means he had to be close enough. It couldn't be anybody sitting far away. And it makes me think about the saying that we have now, keep your enemy close. Because of that scene. So
Yeah.
Just interesting how that works.
So let's ask that question again. Why is servant leadership so essential? Servanthood in leadership. Why is it so essential?
Makes you, leadership is a synonym for influence.
Right.
And so if you want to influence people, you show them how.
Give yourself.
You do yourself. You don't ask them to do something you won't do yourself.
Right.
I think it's what Christ said, servant's not greater than the master. And so if he's willing to serve, we have to be able to serve.
Absolutely. Servant is not greater than the master. We have to keep that in mind all the time. Thank you all for your comments.